Against all odds, the BYU Cougars got to 8-0. Yes, those plucky little underdogs did the job at UCF. How did they pull it off? Well, we're breaking it down on POSTCAST.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU Insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. And as always, thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. As you heard me mention in the open, the plucky underdog BYU Cougars do it again. Now, I'm saying that facetiously, but according to the sports books going into this game against whatever logic, the UCF Knights were the favorite, 2 to 2.5 point favorites. Our friends at FanDuel, last I saw it, had it at 2.5 points, but I saw some other sports books had it lower as much as 2 points. But BYU beats the spread and they run away from the UCF Knights. And the biggest takeaway I had from this game is that BYU took that to heart. This is a team that came out possessed and absolutely dominated the UCF Knights. 37-24 belies every single facet of how dominant a win this was for BYU. Were there some shaky moments? Sure, and we'll dig into those in just a little bit. But man, this BYU team, they heard what was being talked about. And Connor Pace said it on this podcast. The team was upset. They used the term pissed about the fact that they were an underdog despite being ranked 11th in the country, 7-0 on the season, against a team who had a 3-4 record and, oh, by the way, was entering the game on a 4-game losing streak. They had every right to be upset about that. They have a right to be feeling like they're being insulted by the national pundits out there. They should be insulted by the fact that the sports books seem to continually pick against them. But guess what? As long as it keeps you winning football games, who the heck cares? Just do your thing, BYU. I thought this team came out and absolutely had a point to prove, and it was proven in the first 15 minutes of this game. BYU held the ball in that first quarter for more than 12 minutes of action in the first frame alone. I think it was pointed out that it was last time BYU had that much first quarter time of possession. It's way back in 2001 against Hawaii. Now, we know that Hawaii game turned out to be a very much downer type game, but last time BYU was 8-0 to start a season, 2001. This is a BYU team that is just like the rocket that took off from Cape Canaveral 30 miles away from FBC Mortgage Stadium, a.k.a. the bounce house there in Orlando. BYU's on a rocket ship to the moon right now. At this point, entering their second bye week, BYU's 8-0. They're 5-0 in the conference. And if you go 3-1 down the stretch, you're going to find yourself going to Arlington, Texas to take on whoever else decides to finish first or second in the Big 12 Conference. Looking at the remaining games on BYU's schedule, not a single one of them, not a one of them is completely unwinnable for BYU. In fact, I expect BYU maybe, just maybe, against all odds, to be a favorite in most of those games, if not all of them down the stretch. But that's beside the point. We can talk about that more as the bye week progresses coming up next week. This was a dominant win for BYU. Remember, they came in, speaking of UCF, as the second leading rushing on average team in the country, averaging a shade over 280 yards per game. Jay Hill and the BYU defense, there were question marks if they could hold up, considering they gave up almost 270 yards a week ago to Oklahoma State. Well, they responded emphatically, holding the Knights to 181 rushing yards, nearly 100 yards lower than their season average. BYU, conversely, decided, you know what we're going to do? We're going to beat them at their own game. BYU, for the second straight week, runs for over 250 yards. In this one, 252. They had it as high as 258, but obviously we can take some knees at the end of the game. That's going to lower the overall yardage, but a dominant showing for BYU on the ground. LJ Martin is the next in a long line of really, really good running backs in the 2000s era for BYU. Think of Luke Staley, on to guys like Harvey Unga, on to Jamal Williams, on to Tyler Algier. LJ Martin is the latest in that line, and it's going to be a special privilege to watch that young man's career unfold. Goes over the century mark for the second straight game, and I can tell you this much, any concerns about him being injured late in this game, based on people I talked to at BYU after the game, it was a precautionary measure. They didn't need to expose him to any extra hits. They felt like the game was in hand. They had their thing rolling. And oh, by the way, there's a guy named Hinkley Ropati, who I thought had a very, very good performance. And they said, you know what? Let's give Hinkley the chance to clean up shop here. And he did exactly that. 250 yards on the ground. We're getting back, speaking of BYU, to what they did with Tyler Algier in the backfield back in 2021, 2022. The Cougars are rounding into form seemingly at a perfect time. And despite all the things that they struggled with offensively this year, they're still 8-0. This team, it's special. It is absolutely special to watch this team doing what they're doing. I know that there's a lot of angst out there. There's a feeling of, okay, when's the other shoe going to drop? We need to stop with that. I'm speaking for myself. I'm speaking for everybody else listening and or watching this podcast. Enjoy what's happening right now. As I said, much like that SpaceX rocket, this is a BYU program that is gunning for the moon right now. They are going to have an incredible opportunity to have one of the seasons that you will forever remember as a Cougar fan. Could it still go oury? Maybe so. You could lose a game here or there, and obviously the next one upcoming is a little bit scary because it's a rivalry game. You're never quite sure what to expect. But the bigger point to be made here is this is a BYU team that is absolutely running at peak of its powers. Jake Retzloff didn't have to do much. He had a fairly pedestrian day, but kind of funny. It's kind of what he does, because Greg Wrubell tweeted this out after the game. In Jake Retzloff's last 4 games for BYU, he has totaled, count him, 218 yards, 218 yards, 218 yards, and oh, by the way, 228 yards in this one. That's what Jake Retzloff is doing at quarterback. It's not the yesteryear of Ty Detmer throwing for 15,000 career yards. That's just not Jake Retzloff. That's not going to be the hallmark of his career, at least at this juncture. He's going to be a guy who's going to probably sit in the mid 200s, because BYU's overarching goal offensively is to be as balanced as possible. And that's exactly what they did. They piled up 480 yards. And had they really decided to keep the accelerator down, probably could have pushed that over 500 yards and probably could have pushed for 40 plus points. But Kalani Sitake, as he wants to do, he wants to get the game in hand and essentially not Hans Olsen said it on the postgame show. He doesn't want to make enemies. And that's a very good point. He doesn't want to have a coach a la Joe Glenn giving a double bird across the field to a guy. You remember Kyle Whittingham? Remember that back in like 2007 when he decided to onside kick up 40 points and Joe Glenn went double bird to Kyle Whittingham. That's not what Kalani Sitake wants. He wants to win with class. He wants to be a guy who goes out there and wins handily, but at the same time does not embarrass, belittle, or just essentially make a team feel lesser than. And I can respect that. Would I like to see BYU go for style points in some game at some point? Maybe the next one against Utah, if given up the opportunity. Sure, I would like to see that. But the bigger point to be made is the Cougars are 8-0. Life is good in Provo. This is a season, 40 years since BYU last won a national championship. The door is back open for BYU to win a national title. Be it far from me to suggest that BYU is going to win a national title. Also, be it far from me to say that they can't win a national title, considering they have won every game they have played so far to this point. But the door is back open after 40 years in the quote-unquote wilderness. We're going to go back to the biblical reference here. Jake Retzloff, the BYU Jew, I keep screwing that, BYU Jew, has been leading BYU into it, potentially the promised land here. An incredible story. And yes, forgive me for saying that he's leading them into the promised land, because we all know that Moses did not get to lead the children of Israel into the promised land, but the reference still stands. This is a BYU team that's doing their thing. And once again, those plucky little upstarts, underdogs, despite being 7-0, ranked 11th in the country, going on a road trip to be an underdog against a 3-4 team. The baffling nature of it all will never make sense to me, but maybe, just maybe, at some point in the month of November, because that's all we have left for BYU, they will have a bye week this coming week to round out October. Maybe in the month of November, BYU will finally get their just reward and actually be a favorite, and a handy favorite at that. But that's a topic for another day. But a big win for BYU. I thought a solid win, and 37-24 does not do justice to how much of a thorough beatdown this was for BYU. And I really think they took I took that personally as the quote from not from Kyle Whittingham, from Michael Jordan. Wow, that's two different references. But remember, I took that personally. Yeah, I think BYU took being an underdog personally in this one and ran away with it. Now, despite the win, despite the beatdown for BYU, there are still a few things they can clean up. We'll get to those momentarily. We'll also get to your guys' comments. A lot of thoughts on the win, a lot of takeaways, and we'll delve in those as you roll on right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Now, Game Time is here for you guys to get you out to the events you want to go to. If you were one of the thousands of BYU fans down there at the Bounce House enjoying the time in the sun, probably going to Disney or Universal on that trip, good for you guys. I hope you guys took advantage of the offers from our friends at Game Time to get you the tickets you're looking for. The best part about Game Time is even if it's not a sporting event, whether it's a theater show, a comedy show you want to go to, or something like a concert you want to get out to, Game Time's got the options for you guys. The best part about Game Time is it's got an incredible app, make it super simple and easy to use. You can toggle the all-in pricing features. You're not having an avalanche of fees tacked on when you get to the checkout screen. And the best part is today, you can use the Game Time Picks feature, which filters all of the tickets, the thousands of them that exist, and find the right options for you guys so you can spend as little time as possible, but find the best seats for you. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets today and do it with our friends over at Game Time. Go download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege and get $20 off your first purchase. Once again, download the app today. Terms apply. But download Game Time today. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. What time is it? It is game time. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. Cannot thank you guys enough for your continued support of the show. All right, so a couple of things coming out of this one that I would point to that still need to be cleaned up for BYU. Third down defense. It hasn't burned BYU yet, obviously, because they're 8-0, and I'm nitpicking here. I'll be blunt right up. I am nitpicking at this. But there is one glaring issue for this BYU defense still, and it's third down defense. Remember, there was a 3rd and 16 deep in UCF territory. BYU has them dead to rights, and they run like kind of a pseudo screen, just a pass out of the backfield, and the running back gets a first down. And the tackle on it did force the guy forward to give him the extra yard or two that he needed to get the first down. But come on, it's 3rd and 16. And I know that BYU likes to play more conservative on 3rd and long. Maybe Jay Hill needs to change his mindset on that and maybe be a little more aggressive. The drop 8 on those situations has gotten BYU burned a lot this season. I'm not talking just against UCF. It has burned BYU a lot, that drop 8. And I saw a really funny tweet saying, hey, Elisa Tuiaki's still on headset on 3rd and long for BYU. I admit I guffawed at that one. That was a pretty good tweet out there on the interwebs. If that was you, hit me up. I'll be sure to give you a shout out on the show next time we chat. But the thing is, the Cougars need to clean up the third down defense. When given the opportunity to force a stop, you got to get off the field. Remember, UCF ended up marching down the field on that drive and getting a field goal to make it 17-10 at that juncture, if I recall correctly, and made it a little bit nervy. Now, great response from BYU because Chase Roberts gets a 62-yard touchdown pass, tiptoes the sideline, does the rest, and scores it to restore order. And BYU is off and rolling at that point. But it's something that still needs to be worked on that third down defense. Today against UCF, BYU was as penalized as I've seen them all season long. In fact, I think it might have been their highest penalized game of the season. Don't quote me on that, but it's close to it. The biggest thing I saw was that UCF used some different things on their offensive front and caused BYU to jump off sides multiple times in this game. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was a dummy call. Maybe it was the way that they were kind of getting set. Something was drawn BYU off sides, and I'm sure Kalani Sitake will be talking to his guys and say, guys, those are the quote-unquote administrative type penalties we got to clean up. False starts, offsides. Those are cheap 5-yard pickups that you don't need to give away to an opponent. Once again, UCF was overmatched in this game. I acknowledge that fact, but it's something that these coaches, speaking of BYU, every coach loves when you win a football game and you have something to be able to bark at the guys about. And that's what BYU be barked at this week is third down defense. Also their lack of discipline. It sounds too harsh to say lack of discipline, but you want to get rid of those administrative penalties, false starts, offsides, those ticky-tack calls. Those are, you talk about control the controllable. You can control that as a player. Those are the type of penalties you don't need to be picking up for BYU. Other things I'm looking at, a little bit of like I said, nitpicking. The pass protection today was actually pretty up and down for BYU. Is that something that UCF was intent on making life miserable and getting after Jake Retzloff? It looked that way, but BYU's offensive line, funny enough, I thought maybe in my mind, and like I said, I've only watched the game live once. I'll be rewatching and I'll have a full recap for you guys on our Monday edition of the show with my takeaways. But my initial observation was I actually thought BYU's run blocking was better than their pass blocking for the first time this season. Now, once again, Was UCF selling out to get after Jake Retzlaff? It sure looked that way. They were bringing extra pressure, extra guys, and they got after him a little bit. But to BYU's credit, they countered that with a strong running game, and Jake Retzlaff did plenty in the passing game to get the W for BYU. So, yes, I'm sure that TJ Woods will be harping on his guys saying, hey, we got to be better about this. Jake Retzlaff got strip sacked on one of the speed rushes around the edge. And I had a person tweet at me when I put it out on social media saying, well, Jake needs to take care of the football on that and live to play another down. That's the fumble. That's the turnover for Jake Retzlaff. That it's you can't put that on Jake. He was already climbing in the pocket at that point, he kind of felt pressure and starting to climb in the pocket, see if he could get the ball out. And the speed rush just happened to be Braden Keim on the right side of that offensive line for BYU and got to Jake in time to strip the ball out. I'm not going to absolve Jake in terms of like you want to take care of the football as much as possible, but BYU is plus in the margin. It's one of those things. Once again, these are just small things that I saw watching this game. And are they fixable? Absolutely, they're fixable. Once again, BYU's 8-0. Like, there's not a lot going wrong for the Cougars. I'm just talking about things I observed. I'm sure the coaches, despite the win, they'll be, hey, pat them on the head. Good job, guys. Good job on the win. But here's what we need to fix. And there's always things to fix. Even in the best games, coaches can find something, if not some things, to correct their players on. Those are the three things that stood out to me in this game. And like I said, if you have feedback on this, I freely acknowledge, I'd love your feedback on it. There was some concern late in the game that the backup quarterback for UCF came in. Was it what's the other name? It was really Risk. That's who it was. Dalen, whatever. Risk came in and went 6 of 10, 102 yards, ended up getting 2 touchdowns for UCF late in this game. Yeah, that's not ideal, but about the final 10 minutes of this game, was it really anything other than garbage time? That's the other thing about this is, yeah, you'd like to see the backup defense do a little bit better, and they did put some first stringers still back in there in the latter stages of this game. But it goes back to my point. I think 37-24 belies, I thought, how dominant of a win this was for BYU. Were there nervy moments? Absolutely. We get to 17-10 and suddenly UCF's thinking, okay, if we can get to halftime, get the ball back after half and get this maybe game tied up, yeah, that gets a little bit nervy. But what does BYU do as they often do? They find a counter for everything that you seem to throw at them, and Chase Roberts goes right down the sideline for a 62-yard touchdown. That's a hallmark of a really good team. So I'm nitpicking at things here, but there's only a few things to really nitpick at for this BYU squad. And that's the fun part about this is a really, really good team. And we are all being blessed to be able to watch them do what they do. All right. It is your guys' time to shine coming up momentarily. We're going to let you guys sound off on this via social media on Twitter/X. Also, a lot of you in our Locked On Cougars Insider group. We will dig into those, and we'll also talk about what you guys want to talk about, what you learned, what you take away, maybe things that you felt like BYU should have been better about, kind of what I'm talking about, what you're nitpicking at here. We'll get to all that as we roll on right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now, FanDuel is here for you guys to have some fun in the sports betting realm. Now, if you're into sports betting, great. And the best part is right now you can get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's an incredible offer from our friends at FanDuel. So you get the hunch in the middle of a game, you think you got the bead on what's going to happen, whether it's for BYU or any other team out there, you can go to FanDuel, be on the same screen you're placing your bet on, see the live play-by-play stats and the like to keep you apprised of everything going on in case you need to adjust that bet at the last second. Best part about FanDuel is they are America's #1 sports book, and once again, they're hooking you guys up. $200. You heard that right. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So take advantage today. Get over to FanDuel.com, download the app today, or go to FanDuel.com and have some fun with our friends over at FanDuel as they once again are America's #1 sports book. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. If you've not signed up for our Locked On Cougars Insider group, what are you waiting for? It's 8-0 BYU. Why would you not be trying to get any and all intel you can on this BYU team? You can do that with our Locked On Cougars Insider group. You get a 14-day free trial just for signing up and just $5 a month afterwards. And the best part is it comes to your phone, speaking of my updates to you guys, via a text message. Does not get much more direct than that. And hope you guys will be joining us and getting the inside scoop on all things BYU in very, very short order. All right. Thoughts coming in after this one for BYU. And I got to say, overall, pretty effusive praise for BYU, as there should be. Let's see. quick thought. I'm just kind of scrolling through. I'll get to Locked On Cougars Insider Group first. First thing from Weston Birch. Great win for the Cougs. Defense was stout, giving up a few big plays. The offense was solid. BYU was in control of the game the entire time. The only thing that they lost was the coin toss. And that's a good point, Weston. They absolutely dominated this one. I really like that. Kent said this, took the foot off the gas a little too early, but was able to close it out. The score doesn't show the actual whooping BYU put on them, out-rushing the leading rushing team in the country. 8-0, baby. Okay. You may want to check on JT. This might have finished him off. Speaking of JT Wister, still host of Locked On Utes. Yes, Utah is 4-4, folks. They've lost 4 straight games, and they are near the bottom of the Big 12 conference. BYU's at the top. Crazy scenes, but a good point by Kent. It was the score belies how much of a dominant win this was for BYU. Jimmy, what an amazing win for this team. They have earned every bit of this 8-0 start. You're not wrong about this. He also adds, I hope that the coaching staff has a conversation with the players about putting Utah away in 2 weeks. It's scary when they start giving their opponents hope like that, but this is a dang, he doesn't say dang, good team, Jake. Maybe the best since 96. Woo! Mason Wake brought that conversation up, who, by the way, Mason Wake, star player for BYU in that 2020 team. He said, who would win today? And he mentioned that 24 BYU versus 2020 BYU. Strong debate there. Mason obviously I think is a little bit biased, but this is a really good team and maybe the best since 96. Can't argue with that based on the record right now, because you think about it, they had some really good teams from 06 to 09. They won like 43-ish games in that 4-year span, but never made a run like they have made this season, Jimmy. So maybe you got a point there. Maybe it is the best in that bunch. Kevin, at the beginning of the season, I would have completely believed the records of 8-0 and 4-4 would be likely for BYU and Utah. However, not only would I have had the teams reversed, but I probably would have had a reasonably happy feeling for BYU with that 4-4 record. You're not alone in that, Kevin. This is a BYU team that is just surpassing. Like I said, it's a rocket ship to the moon right now. They have surpassed every expectation of this team. Like in your wildest dreams, did you believe BYU is going to go on an 8-0 start to the season and find themselves probably inside the top 10 come Sunday? I didn't. And it's a ton of fun to be tracking. People ask me all the time, are you having the time of your life, Jake? Yeah, I'm having the time of my life. There's a lot to do. I have a lot of things to do in my life, but the best part about this podcast, it allows me to quote unquote, let my hair down and talk about a thing I'm passionate about. And that's BYU. Cameron Jackson, go Cougs, baby. That's all he said. Cameron, bingo, nailed it. Go Cougs, baby. That absolutely awesome. Andrew Lida, unfortunately, I think Vegas might start making BYU the favorite going forward. You're not wrong, Andrew. They may have to actually change their tone on it. Let's see. David McDonough. I missed this one earlier from David, but he added this. So he at 5:00 after shortly after the game ended, he says disappointed they took the foot off the gas. 2 hours later, 7:16 p.m. is when this text came in. Hi, Jake. I have changed my mind on the taking of the foot off the gas comment. I think BYU did absolutely incredible tonight. I'm embarrassed not to know, but what is the site, I think on X, that Greg Wrubell and Hans Olsen keep referring to on which they read people's comments during the postgame show? It is X. It's social media. It's Twitter is where Greg pulls them from. I would really like to be able to get involved and post a comment from time to time, but I'm not sure where to go. Well, I don't think, David, you're alone in that. It is on social media, X, a.k.a. Twitter. That's where Greg pulls most of those comments from. That's how he does that super skill testing trivia contest and that type of stuff. It's on X, aka Twitter, so check that out. Let's see. Bryce, complete game. Only thing I didn't like were the struggles against Risk, but I get that he gives them a different look, so it's understandable. Just frustrating in the moment. I get that. Late in the game, you're hoping BYU can just run away and, like you said, get some style points. I get that frustration, but it was garbage time. I'm not gonna lay much judgment on that. Let's see other comments here. Loved it. Comes from Tanner Laramie. Great team win. Like I said, there's not a lot to take away from this other than it was a really, really fun game. Okay, this is a good comment here. Connor. So it's from Riker. Connor's face when UCF called their last time out was absolutely priceless. You're not wrong, Connor. I think the rest of BYU is like, what are you doing? And the best part of that whole sequence, remember, they called that timeout late when BYU was trying to kneel out the game, is the referee leaving his mic on, speaking of a hot mic, and saying, let's get it going. I got a dinner reservation, and I don't know, Giordano's in downtown, or I don't know where he's going in Orlando, but maybe he's going to the parks. Maybe he's going to the Magic Kingdom. made me chuckle. Why are you calling that timeout? That just was petty and unneeded. I don't get it. Let's see. Tanya, doubters need to take their doubting somewhere else. Doubt is no longer in the Cougar vocabulary. Congrats, BYU. Tanya, speaking truth. Absolutely. Geez, so many things here. UCF Avenue is mid like their team. Running the football well will make the difference. Running the football well will make the difference in how well our offense performs. This comes from Jeff, who was at the game. Jeff lives down in Florida. Are you in Orlando, Jeff? I don't remember if you are in Orlando, but he said he was at the game. UCF Avenue is mid like their team. They're 3-5. Is Gus Malzahn going to lose his job? There's an argument to be made there because things aren't going well for the Knights, and I can get the frustration that Knights fans have. They've lost 5 straight games. It's incredible, but maybe they were going with the wrong quarterbacks all along. Maybe Risk is the guy for the Knights, but I would have a hard time believing that. But hey, all the same, really, really impressed with how BYU performed. All right, let's get a couple in from social media as well. Let's see. Wild Turkey Fartblunt, our good friend VWAG23 Ryan. Did LJ's foot get amputated in the second half? Let me reiterate, talking to coaches and players after the game, some of the conversation I had with individuals in the program was that he was just taken out for precautionary reasons. I get all that. You just want to make sure that he stays healthy. Remember, you lost LJ earlier on in the season. BYU's run game struggled as a result. So you had the game in hand, firmly in hand. Why would you put them back in the game? Other questions here. Also, NCAA is trash at Y for Life. Okay, Y5, tell us how you really feel about the NCAA. Still got things to work on. Seems like we have some injuries in QB rushing technique to learn from. That is, I guess, one thing I can add. Jake Retzloff needs to learn how to run a QB sneak. He is not very good at it right now. And like I said, that's nitpicking at its highest degree. Remember that sneak that he had? He was way too hesitant. With QB sneaks, the QB has got to pick a spot, get low, and drive forward. You cannot be tentative on that play, and that's why he got stuffed on that. He got close to the goal line, but I think he was absolutely short, and they called it the right way, speaking of the officials. Royal Coug, 10 steps to get more W's, and he literally lists this 10 times. Keep feeding the ball. Keep feeding LJ the ball, and he literally repeats it 10 straight times in the tweet underneath that. You're not wrong about that. BYU's rushing offense is going to be a big reason why they have success down the stretch. There's absolutely the truth about that. Let's see. Okay, here's a good one. Luke McDermott Jr. at Lucasimo. Not sure what the two time zone fuss is all about. It's like BYU did that as an independent for the first 7 years. Kalani coached the team or something. Winking, smiling emoji. Go Cougs. Good point. Remember, BYU before Kalani took over as head coach were they 0-10 all time, 0-9 all time in the state of Florida? He's 3-1 now in the state of Florida. Now, those wins have come against UCF and USF, but still really, really impressive stuff for the Cougars under Kalani traveling across the country. I really do like what they're doing. So, yeah, I look at this and like I said, there's not a lot to take away other than this is a BYU team that's absolutely dominant. So let's just enjoy it, folks. It is absolutely marvelous. We got 2 weeks to build up to the Utah game. It is going to be a little bit of a wild time because I'm not even sure what to make of Utah at this point. But hey, we got 14 days to break it all down. So we'll also have BYU basketball kicking up here. If you did not see it, BYU won their, and use the air quotes, secret scrimmage over Boise State today, 91-86, is what I was told about it. So obviously a big win for BYU basketball. And what I also was told is not all of BYU's guys were in that game. Speaking of rotation pieces, multiple, I was told multiple rotation pieces did not play in that game. So this BYU basketball team is going to take some headlines, I think, for this first week. They have their first scrimmage on Tuesday against, is it Colorado Christian? And I will be out at that, hopefully breaking that down. But once again, we got 2 weeks to go to the rivalry game, and fingers crossed, baby. 2-0 against the Utes, 2 straight wins over the Utes, and 9-0. That's what we're manifesting right now for the BYU Cougars. All right, that's going to do it for this postcast edition of the show. As always, thank you for all of your guys' support. Thank you for all your feedback. Thank you for all your interaction. Just simply put, thank you for the love. You guys are absolutely marvelous. I cannot thank all y'all enough for all the support you give the show. Once again, thank you for making it your first view and or listen of the day. And thank you, as always, to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.